Well, good evening, everyone. This is your average Jan coming at you from my room, as usual. Anyway, today we're going to move on with our Bible journey. So, this is going to be Genesis part 12, and I'm not going to do it live like I did last time. I think I like recording it in advance and then playing it again. But I guarantee this story is getting good. And I did read, no, I did not. I read, but I also typed up some more so I can continue with this story. So it's going to get exciting. Let me call this up and join me for the ride. There's that. Okay, here we go. I don't know if I need to turn this up or not. Welcome to the Weird Bible section of I'm Only Human, a podcast that is probably destined to become controversial if anyone actually listened to it, inspired by people for people. I have different story arcs going on throughout my podcast, and this area focuses on the NIV Bible, copyright 2011. I'm taking things directly from the Bible and putting an average human perspective on history. According to the Bible, we were created in the image of this person named God. Well, there are plenty of other views on the topic too, but this one will remain focused on the Bible. I feel the repetition of human emotions and behaviors that preceded all the foolishness that has led to the culture of our modern world has been greatly overlooked. I will not be speaking in traditional religious terms, and I'm sure I'll be saying a bunch of stuff wrong too. My apologies in advance. I'm not trying to destroy religion. I believe we were all created equal. Somewhere along the line, we forgot about that. I believe there is more knowledge in the Bible than people realize. Join me on this exciting adventure. How does our modern world compare to the world in the Bible? Is God the biggest grifter of all time? I would like to state that I am not an expert. I get my knowledge by observation, evaluating, researching, and building on the things I learn from other people. I believe there is truth in science fiction, movies, and in children's stories. It's time to wake up. It's time to reprogram our thinking and change our world in a peaceful way. Welcome back. Welcome back. I noticed that my microphone was a little bit noisy last time, and I don't know why that is. As far as I know, I didn't hit the cord. Hopefully, this episode won't have those weird little noises in the background. So, we left off, let's see. We left off in the last episode with Joseph getting out of prison and being promoted by Pharaoh. I think that was the quickest recap ever. So now that Joseph is in charge of Egypt, what do you think is going to happen? Well, let's find out together. Genesis 41, verse 41 to 57. So Pharaoh said to Joseph, I hereby put you in charge of the whole land of Egypt. Then Pharaoh took his signet ring from his finger and put it on Joseph's finger. He dressed him in robes of fine linen and put a gold chain around his neck. He had him ride in a chariot as his second in command, and people shouted before him, Make way! Thus he put him in charge of the whole land of Egypt. Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, I am Pharaoh, but without your word, no one will lift a hand or foot in all of Egypt. Pharaoh gave Joseph the name Pharaoh gave Joseph the name Zap Zapheneth Paneah, and gave him Asnath, daughter of Portapira, priest of On, to be his wife. And Joseph went throughout the land of Egypt. Sorry again about those names. Okay. Joseph was 33 years old when he entered the service of Pharaoh, king of Egypt. And Joseph went out from Pharaoh's presence and traveled throughout Egypt. During the 7 years of abundance, the land produced plentifully, and Joseph collected all the food produced in those 7 years of abundance in Egypt. Joseph collected all the food produced in those 7 years of abundance in Egypt and stored it in the cities. In each city, he put the food grown in the fields surrounding it. Joseph stored up huge quantities of grain, like the sand of the sea. There was so much that he stopped keeping records because it was beyond measure. Before the years of famine came, two sons were born to Joseph by Asenath, daughter of Potipherah, priest of On. Joseph named his firstborn Manasseh and said, "It is because God has made me forget all my trouble and all my father's household." The second son he named Ephraim, and said, "It is because God has made me fruitful in the land of my suffering." The 7 years of abundance in Egypt came to an end, and the 7 years of famine began. Just as Joseph has There was famine in all other lands, but in the whole land of Egypt there was food. When all Egypt began to feel the famine, the people cried to Pharaoh for food. Then Pharaoh told all the Egyptians, "Go to Joseph and do what he tells you." When the famine had spread over the whole country, Joseph opened all the storehouses and sold grain to the Egyptians, for the famine was severe throughout Egypt, and all the world came to Egypt to buy grain from Joseph because the famine was severe everywhere. That was a lot of stuff to say. Okay, that's pretty self explanatory. Good thing Jacob planned ahead. And now that the period of abundance is done, now everybody has to come to Egypt in order to get food. So, what do you think's going to happen? Let's just get on with the story. All right. So, Genesis verse 42, verse 1 to. Wait, wrong page. Oh, this is going to be a lot. 1 to 38. Okay, so we're going to be moving on with the story, but as we're moving on, Jacob and Joseph, the names sound similar. So remember who Jacob was? Jacob is Joseph's father. He thinks that Joseph has been killed by some wild animal. Okay, now you have a little bit of context. Genesis 42, verse 1 to 38. When Jacob learned that there was grain in Egypt, he said to his sons, "Why do you just keep looking at each other?" He continued, "I have heard that there is grain in Egypt. Go down there and buy some for us so that we may live and not die." Then 10 of Joseph's brothers went down to buy grain from Egypt, but Jacob did not send Benjamin, Joseph's brother, with the others, because he was afraid that harm might come to him. So Israel's sons were among those who went to buy grain, for there was famine in the land of Canaan also. Now Joseph was the governor of the land, the person who sold grain to all its people. So when Joseph's brothers arrived, they bowed down to him with their faces to the ground. As soon as Joseph saw his brothers, he recognized them, but he pretended to be a stranger and spoke harshly to them. "Where do you come from?" he asked. "From the land of Canaan," they replied, "to buy food." Although Joseph recognized his brothers, they did not recognize him. Then he remembered his dreams about them and said to them, "You are spies. You have come to see where our land is unprotected." "No, my lord," they answered. "Your servants have come to buy food. We are all the sons of one man. Your servants are honest men, not spies." "No," he said to them. "You have come to see where our land is unprotected." But they replied, "Your servants were 12 brothers, the sons of one man who lives in the land of Canaan. The youngest is now with our father, and one is no more." Joseph said to them, "It is just as I told you, you are spies, and this is how you will be tested. As surely as Pharaoh lives, you will not leave this place unless your youngest brother comes here. Send one of your number to get your brother. The rest of you will be kept in prison so that your words may be tested to see if you are telling the truth. If you are not, then as surely as Pharaoh lives, you are spies." And he put them all in custody for 3 days. On the third day, Joseph said to them, "Do this and you will live, for I fear God. If you are honest men, let one of your brothers stay here in prison while the rest of you go and take grain back for your starving households. But you must bring your youngest brother to me, so that your words may be verified and that you may not die." This they proceeded to do. They said to one another, "Surely we are being punished because of our brother. We saw how distressed he was when he pleaded with us for his life, but we would not listen. That's why this distress has come on us." Reuben replied, "Didn't I tell you not to sin against the boy? But you wouldn't listen. Now we must give an accounting for his blood." They did not realize that Joseph could understand them since he was using an interpreter. He turned away from them and began to weep, but then came back and spoke to them again. He had Simeon taken from them and bound before their eyes. Joseph gave orders to fill their bags with grain, to put each man's silver back in his sack, and to give them provisions for their journey. After this was done for them, they loaded their grain on their donkeys and left. At the place where they stopped for the night, one of them opened his sack to get feed for his donkey, and he saw his silver in the mouth of his sack. "My silver has been returned," he said to his brothers. "Here, it's in my sack." Their hearts sank, and they turned to each other, trembling, and said, "What is this that God has done to us?" When they came to their father Jacob in the land of Canaan, they told him all that had happened to them. They said, "The man who is lord over the land spoke harshly to us and treated us as though we were spying on the land. But we said to him, 'We are honest men. We are not spies. We were 12 brothers, sons of one father. One is no more, and the youngest is now with our father in Canaan.' Then the man who is lord over the land said to us, 'This is how I will know whether you are honest men. Leave one of your brothers here with me and take food for your starving households and go. But bring your youngest brother to me, so I will know that you are not spies, but honest men. Then I will give your brother back to you, and you can trade in the land.' As they were emptying their sacks, there in each man's sack was his pouch of silver. When they and their father saw the money pouches, they were frightened. Their father Jacob said to them, 'You have deprived me of my children. Joseph is no more, and Simeon is no more, and now you want to take Benjamin? Everything is against me.' Then Reuben said to his father, 'You may put both of my sons to death if I do not bring him back to you. Entrust him to my care, and I will bring him back.' But Jacob said, 'My son will not go down there with you. His brother is dead, and he is the only one left. If harm comes to him on the journey you are taking, you will bring my gray head down to the grave in sorrow.'" Okay, I know that I had notes on this. Where are my notes? I know that I don't have to do a whole recap for you guys, but imagine how hard this has to be for Joseph to see these brothers of his and not say anything about it. I know that he had to stay in character and he tried not to cry in front of them, so he had to turn away. Okay, so Joseph is hearing the conversation from the mouths of his brother. He knows that they know they did him a great injustice. That took away 20 years of his life at least, all because they were jealous of him. It was a complete jerk thing for his brothers to do that to him. But look what became of him because of that one move. Joseph stayed with God and he was favored for it. He kept getting rewarded for all of his suffering. Let me turn the page. But Joseph had to keep going with the lie. He couldn't let his brothers see him cry. So once he regained his composure, well, we know he sent the brothers back and kept one. He kept Simeon. And so now the brothers, they have to go back and tell all of this to Jacob. Jacob ain't having it. But I think eventually they're going to run out of food. And let's see what happens. So let's go back to the story. I did have a bunch of stuff written, but since I'm reading it, I don't have to recap every little thing that happens because I believe you're all smart enough to follow along with this storyline. Okay, we're getting back into Genesis now. We're at chapter 43, verse 1 to, let's see, how far are we going? 1 to verse 34. Yep, okay. Here we go. Now the famine was still severe in the land. So when they had eaten all the grain they had bought from Egypt, their father said to them, "Go back and buy us a little more food." But Judah said to him, "The man warned us solemnly, 'You will not see my face again unless your brother is with you. If you will send our brother along with us, we will go down and buy food for you. But if you will not send him, we will not go down, because the man said to us, 'You will not see my face again unless your brother is with you.'" Israel asked, "Why did you bring this trouble on me by telling the man you had another brother?" They replied, "The man questioned us closely about ourselves and our family. 'Is your father still living?' he asked us. 'Do you have another brother?' We simply answered his questions. How were we to know? How were we to know he would say, 'Bring your brother down here'?" Then Judah said to Israel, his father, "Send the boy along with me, and we will go at once, so that we and you and our children may live and not die. I myself will guarantee his safety. You can hold me personally responsible for him. If I do not bring him back to you and set him here before you, I will bear the blame before you all my life. I myself will guarantee his safety. You can hold me personally responsible for him. If I do not bring him back to you and set him here before you, I will bear the blame before you all my life. As it as it is, if we had not delayed, we could have gone and returned twice." Then their father Israel said to them, "If it must be, then do this. Put some of our best products of the land in your bags and take them down to the man as a gift: a little balm and a little honey, some spices and myrrh, some pistachio nuts and almonds. Take double the amount of silver with you, for you must return the silver that was put back into the mouths of your sacks. Perhaps it was a mistake. Take your brother also and go back to the man at once. And may God Almighty grant you mercy before the man, so that he will let your other brother and Benjamin come back with you. As for me, if I am bereaved, I am bereaved." So the men took the gifts and double the amount of silver, and Benjamin also. They hurried down to Egypt and presented themselves to Joseph. When Joseph saw Benjamin with them, he said to the steward of his house, "Take these men to my house, slaughter an animal, and prepare a meal. They are to eat with me at noon." The man did as Joseph told him and took the men to Joseph's house. Now the men were frightened when they were taken to his house. They thought, "We were brought back here because of the silver that was put back into our sacks the first time. He wants to attack us and overpower us and seize us as slaves and take our donkeys." So they went up to Joseph's steward and spoke to him at the entrance to the house. "We beg your pardon, our lord," they said. "We came down here the first time to buy food, but at the place where we stopped for the night, we opened our sacks and each of us found his silver, the exact weight, in the mouth of. So we have brought it back with us. We have also brought additional silver with us to buy food. We don't know who put our silver in our sacks." "It's all right," he said. "Don't be afraid. Your God, the God of your father, has given you treasure in your sacks. I received your silver." Then he brought Simeon out to them. The steward took the men into Joseph's house, gave them water to wash their feet, and provided fodder for their donkeys. They prepared their gifts for Joseph's arrival at noon, because they had heard that they were to eat there. When Joseph came home, they presented to him the gifts they had brought into the house, and they bowed down before him to the ground. He asked them how they were, and then he said, "How is your aged father you told me about? Is he still living?" They replied, "Your servant, our father, is still alive and well." And they bowed down, prostrating themselves before him. As he looked about and saw his brother Benjamin, his own mother's son, he asked, "Is this your youngest brother, the one you told me about?" And he said, "God be gracious to you, my son." Deeply moved at the sight of his brother, Joseph hurried out and looked for a place to weep. He went into his private room and wept there. After he had washed his face, he came out and, controlling himself, said, serve the food. They had served him by himself, the brothers by themselves, and the Egyptians who ate with him by themselves, because Egyptians could not eat with Hebrews, for that is detestable to Egyptians. The men had been seated before him in the order of their ages, from the firstborn to the youngest, and they looked at each other in astonishment. When the portions were served to them from Joseph's table, Benjamin's portion was 5 times as much as anyone else's. So they feasted and drank freely with them. And that was the end of the verse. So, how weird do you think this is for Joseph's brothers? I mean, here he is trying to keep a straight face and trying to be all enforcing and stuff, and they're kind of freaking out. They're letting their guard down now that there's food and drink. It's a family reunion that they don't know they're attending, but that's kind of cool. Should we stop it here for the day? What do you think? Nope, I gotta do it. I gotta finish this last part of the story. Genesis 44, verse 1 to 34. Now Joseph gave these instructions to the steward of his house. Fill the men's sacks with as much food as they can carry, and put each man's silver in the mouth of his sack. Then put my cup, the silver one, in the mouth of the youngest one's sack, along with the silver for his grain. And he did as Joseph said. As the morning dawned, the men were sent on their way with their donkeys. They had not gone far from the city when Joseph said to his steward, Go after those men at once, and when you catch up with them, say to them, Why have you repaid good with evil? Isn't this the cup my master drinks from and also uses for divination? This is a wicked thing you have done. When he caught up with them, he repeated these words to them. But they said to him, Why does my lord say such things? Far be it from your servants to do anything like that. We even brought back to you from the land of Canaan the silver we found inside the mouths of our sacks. So why would we steal silver or gold from your master's house? If any of your servants is found to have it, he will die, and the rest of us will become my lord's slaves. Very well, then, he said. Let it be as you say. Whoever is found to have it will become my slave. The rest of you will be free from blame. Each of them quickly lowered his sack to the ground and opened it. Then the steward proceeded to search, beginning with the oldest and ending with the youngest. And the cup was found in Benjamin's sack. At this, they tore their clothes. Then they loaded all their donkeys and returned to the city. Joseph was still in the house when Judah and his brothers came in, and they threw themselves to the ground before him. Joseph said to them, What is this you have done? Don't you know that a man like me can find things out by divination? What can we say to my lord? Judah replied. What can we say? How can we prove our innocence? God has uncovered your servant's guilt. We are now my lord's slaves, we ourselves and the one who was found to have the cup. But Joseph said, Far be it from me to do such a thing. Only the man who was found to have the cup will become my slave. The rest of you go back to your father in peace. Then Judah went up to him and said, Pardon your servant, my lord. Let me speak a word to my lord. Do not be angry with your servant, though you are equal to Pharaoh himself. My lord asked his servants, Do you have a father or a brother? And we answered, We have an aged father, and there is a young son born to him in his old age. His brother is dead, and he is the only one left of his mother's sons, and his father loves him. And then you said to your servants, Bring him down to me so I can see him for myself. And we said to my lord, The boy cannot leave his father. If he leaves him, his father will die. But you told your servants, Unless your youngest brother comes down with you, you will not see my face again. When we went back to your servant, my father, when we went back to your servant, my father, we told him what my lord had said. Then our father said, Go back and buy a little more food. But we said, We cannot go down. Only if our youngest brother is with us will we go. We cannot see the man's face unless our younger brother is with us. Your servant, my father, said to us, You know that my wife bore me 2 sons. One of them went away from me, and I said, He has surely been torn to pieces, and I have not seen him since. If you take this one from me too, and harm comes to him, you will bring my gray head down to the grave in misery. So now, if the boy is not with us when I go back to your servant, my father, and if my father, whose life is closely bound up with the boy's life, sees the boy isn't there, he will die. Your servants will bring the gray head of our father down to the grave in sorrow. Your servant guaranteed the boy's safety to my father. I said, if I do not bring him back to you, I will bear the blame before you, my father, all my life. Now then, please let your servant remain here as my lord's slave in place of the boy, and let the boy return with his brothers. How can I go back to my father if the boy is not with me? No, do not let me see the misery that would come on my father. That sounds like a better place to leave off for the day. Have a good afternoon. Bye bye. In closing, I would like to say that the opinions expressed here were strictly of my own making or by my guests. Take what you like and leave the rest. You may come to realize that you may not like me or what I want to share, but let's talk to each other, reason things out, but let there be no gossip or criticism of one another. Instead, let the fellowship of ethical human behavior and the serenity from positive human interaction help you grow and chill out one experience at a time. I would like to thank my higher power for guiding me through this podcast. I hope to spread the message of love, hope, and understanding by touching one life at a time. If you like this podcast, please like and share it. Comments also help other struggling people find it. I am also listener supported, and if you would like to contribute, please feel free to do so. There is no obligation. If you would like to share feedback, you can email me at averagehumanbeing1875@gmail.com. There is also a link you can click if you'd like to send a voice message and add to the content of the show. Okay, so let me get this off the screen. So, what do you think? How are you thinking of that story? Has it got your interest yet? Are you excited to see what happens next? Well, it's not going to be in the next episode because that is something completely different. That's another music talks episode featuring Jelly Roll. And then after that episode, maybe I'll get back to the Bible journey and you can find out what happens then. So take care. Have a good night.